We are back here at Atlantic Health System, home of Atlantic Sports Health. And Dr. Damion Martins, we're talking about early sports specialization, and we're talking about risk factors now. What should parents be looking for?
Sure. So last time, Bill, we talked about some of the things that we need to watch out for that would identify an athlete that's specialized too early. And my big concern, I think the concern of the parents, is what happens if they do specialize too soon? What are the risks? Well, number one is overuse injuries, and there's no doubt, every study has shown that depending on the sport, the increased risk of injury is anywhere between 2 to 4 times.
Wow.
So they're 2 to 4 times more likely to have an injury if they're a one-sport specialized athlete. Very concerning. The second is the emotional and physical burnout.
Yeah.
So what happens in a lot of these athletes is that they play it so much, they lose the love of the game, and they emotionally burn out. And most of the requests we have here at Atlantic Sports Health for our sports psychology department is for athletes that are burned out, that no longer love the sport. And you know this, training athletes for a long time. At some point in their training, it has to go from external motivation to internal motivation.
Yes. Yeah.
And if they're no longer internally motivated because they don't love the sport and they're getting pressure from their parents or coaches to do it, they burn out, they hate it, they don't play anymore.
Well, I think that is so important for parents to hear, coaches to hear, because, we rarely put ourselves in the athlete's position, right? If you're a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid, or even younger today, right?
Yep.
9, 10, 11, 12. They're working so hard, that one sport, that emotional burnout, and taking time off is so important. It's so important just to get away from it for a while. Even maybe if they're not playing another sport, going into a training program, going into something that is just completely different from that sport. What's some of the case studies you've seen? I mean, I've heard of some athletes that were really successful at the high school level, and then all of a sudden they just don't want to compete in college. It's just after high school they are pretty much done but have the ability.
They do. So I think there's some of it is education to the parents, education to the players, the athletes themselves. When you look at the chances of going from high school to the professional level, the odds are not in your favor, right? So we know, and there's some good information on this, depending on the sport, take football for example, it's your odds of doing that are around 2 in 10,000 from going from high school to the professional level. That's pretty close to the odds of getting struck by lightning in your lifetime.
Yeah.
And so the odds are not in your favor. You want to make sure, in my opinion, that you're identifying these athletes early, that they're not training too much, they're not spending more than 8 months a year in a given sport. And a nice rule of thumb is that you really shouldn't be doing your practice or your sport more than your age. So if you're 16 years old, you shouldn't be spending more than 16 hours a week in your sport. Good rule of thumb.
That's a great rule of thumb, a great takeaway. And sometimes, parents need to have these little, just little tidbits of information to make these decisions. And I think it's important to also, have the athlete share what they're feeling, right? Sometimes we don't even give our athletes a chance to talk. I know as a conditioning coach, a big part of what we do, and even some of the higher level guys, will ask athletes, how do you like this type of training? Or is this modality work best for you? Because athletes are much smarter than you think in terms of them giving a read on their own bodies and how they respond to certain types of training. So from a mental standpoint, we have to ask them questions. Yep. Awesome.
Correct.
Well, thanks so much. Really great information.
Pleasure.
I know the coaches and our parents out there take advantage of this. So, take advantage of this info, and we're going to keep coming back with lots more.
Thanks a lot, Bill.
My pleasure.